Wonder Woman versus Superman. Caitlin Clark electrified us during most of us during the NCAA tournament. But Tommy Schorer here, he's been electrified for at least 4 years, maybe longer. So we're looking forward to hearing from him. Tommy, I think she has electrified. How long have you been watching her play?
Yeah, so I saw her play a little bit in high school. Her high school, West Des Moines Dowling Catholic, was about an hour and a half away from Iowa City. So not super local to me, but I am from the Des Moines area where she played and know Dowling very well. So I saw her once or twice in high school, but yeah, saw a lot of her at the University of Iowa.
And you have a unique perspective. You had a lot better seat than most of us at basketball games. So appreciate you joining. And for those who have joined us, Tommy is the instant replay master at the University of Iowa women's basketball games. And in a minute, I'm going to ask him to explain what happens at instant replay for those of us, including myself, who don't really understand. Mike was Pete's best friend in high school, but not in basketball. It wasn't about basketball with Mike. And so he and Pete had a special relationship. Mike graduated from UNC, then went over to Raleigh and got some degrees, and became a principal at every level at Wake County public schools, including principals of high schools. And then he went on and got involved with the charter school. So Mike brings an interesting perspective. CEO of Dooable Health, who is sponsoring this. I was also a good friend of Pete's, and I got a chance to play basketball with Pete. So when Caitlin broke his record, as the debate broke out, well, who is better? Oh, Caitlin's record shouldn't count because of this, that, and the other that we'll cover. But then I started paying attention to Caitlin, and I never had before. And what an unbelievable surprise. So I see Mike, and there's a little thing in there that says I walked on at the University of Virginia, which is true. I shortly thereafter walked off, and that's another story for another day. But at any rate, because I want to start the audience off with a question, and you all have chat feature down there. And you just click on that. And I want you to write one word. Either you're going to write Caitlin or you're going to write pistol, because I want to know who you have right now before we start talking about any of them. Who you got now behind the scenes. And if you have a good question, just put it in chat. This is Mike Jordan. I've already introduced you as Pete's best friend. Thank you for being here. Tommy's on. All right, Tommy. Before we go further, tell us what happens at instant replay at the scores table with the officials. And guess what? Guess who that is under Caitlin's arm? It is the one and only.
So that was after her game-winning shot at the buzzer to beat Indiana in February of 2023. So her junior year. There's some Big Ten tournament implications in that game, regular season finale. She caught a sideline inbounds pass and hit a three at the buzzer to win it for the Hawkeyes. But yeah, so my role at the women's basketball game is running instant replay. Basically, when things are uneventful, I'm cataloging plays. So every foul that's called, every violation that's called, I'm entering which official on the floor called it, what the call was, who it was against, or who fouled or violated, and which team and which number. Then the situation that everybody sees on TV is when they want to go to review something, right? And then some people like instant replay, some people don't, some people are middle of the road. My role in that instance is to bring up the different angles for the officials to look at. So they come over, they tell me what they're looking for, what they want to look at. And I have over 20 years of basketball officiating experience myself. So I have a good understanding of the game from that perspective and what they're looking for and what they're trying to see. So they come over, they tell me what they want to see. I bring up all the different angles for them, one at a time, for them to look out. Now, what can get tricky is my system will be populated with 6 or 7 feeds, sometimes more in it. When we get into the NCAA tournament, there's typically some more, but I don't generally have all of the angles that TV has or that the in-house Jumbotron and everything has. So what happens in those situations is I have a little box on my screen that shows me what TV is showing to the at-home audience. So I see that. I have to hit a button to capture that so I can then show that to the officials, because their biggest fear is that the audience at home is seeing something that they can't see, and that one thing is going to be the angle that shows us who the ball went out of bounds on, or whether it's a flagrant foul or intentional foul in the women's game or what have you. So my job is to show them all the available angles that I have, but also keep an eye on what TV is showing so I can capture that and show that to them as well, to get them to the point that they can make a decision one way or another, call stands, calls reversed, they missed something, they didn't miss something, all that fun stuff. So, and there's some games where there's no reviews and I'm stealing money just cataloging plays. There's some games where there's a lot of reviews and they're coming over to me more than I'd like. And my friends are texting me that I'm on TV all the time, especially with Caitlin's games this season. There are a lot of people watching, a lot of people texting me. So that's kind of my role down there at the scorer's table for Iowa women's basketball.
Well, Tommy, where are the feeds that you're getting coming from of the different angles? Who is getting that for you?
They come from the TV truck, but they'll only send 6 or 7, and then there are other ones that they just have for their purposes if they need it. So, and I don't know I know some tech stuff, but not enough to know why I can't get more than what I have, or why they choose not to send more than what I have. But I talk to the TV truck prior to every game and say, okay, how many feeds are you sending me? And if it's we had at least 2 Fox primetime Saturday night games this season. And so they've got cameras above the backboards, cameras in the stanchions, floor cameras, opposite midcourt camera, plus the normal up top and, these different angles. And there's some in-house cameras too that I have access to. So it's just figuring out before the game what feeds I have going to my system, what looks I have, and then keeping my eye out when we go to replay, knowing what I do and don't have, and then seeing what TV is showing so I can capture something if they're showing something that I don't already have.
Tommy, here's a hard question. Have the officials ever asked you what you think?
Off the record or on the record?
I don't know what we are. I don't know what we are right now.
They've asked me. They mostly ask if there are any angles that I think better shows them what they're looking for.
Yeah.
There have been times where knowing my officiating background, they've asked me what I have thought about a call, not one that was being reviewed, but later on, like, hey, what do you think of that block charge I had, or something like that? And I may take another look at it on my screen and tell them what I think, not as an official replay, but just kind of as some feedback for them.
That is cool. Thank you so much for explaining that to us.
Absolutely.
So we're now going to go into some history. So we'll start with distant history instead of recent history. Mike, what in the world is this?
Joe, this is our yearbook from Broughton High School, 1965, when you and I and lots of other people, but the famous Pete Maravich graduated from high school. And this is the introduction page of that yearbook from 1965. And there's a note on there to you. And my goodness, there he is himself.
Yeah. Dice, advance that again. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Pete. Big ears and a big smile. And that's the way a lot of us remember him. That's for sure.
And it says the quote, they put a quote by every person. We never heard him boast of his remarkable feats.
That is really true. You would think somebody who was as accomplished as he was at a sport that lots of people loved to watch and play, that he'd be spouting off about lots of things that he could do. But he never did that. He never did that. Almost everybody that you talk to that knew him at that time will tell you that Pete thought he was the greatest football quarterback there ever lived, the best baseball pitcher there ever was, but he never talked to you about his shooting prowess and his passing prowess. That just wasn't part of what Pete talked about with his friends.
That is fascinating, Mike. All right. He left me this note. I had not looked at this in 50 years or 60 years. Well, it's been 60 years, hasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, 60. Yeah.
And I found this note and written in my yearbook. And now understand that we nicknamed Pete. He had two nicknames. One was El Snoz because he had a big, and the other was Skinny because he was skinny as a rail. Now, he wrote this to me. He said, "Nose baby." I said, "Man, you must really put the grease on that nose to get it so shiny." Sorry, I can't make it down to the beach because we were all going to the beach after graduation. But I'm sure you, Porky, now Porky is a nickname that he gave one Mike Jordan, who will be forever known as Porky from now on. He said, "You and Porky and the rest of them will handle it all right. During the past 2 years, I've met a lot of people, but as far as personality wise, you're tops. I'm also sorry I didn't play you enough in the student faculty game, but you did all right anyway. There's no doubt in my mind that you will succeed in a big way. And I just want to wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you." That was the last time I saw Pete in person, was when he wrote that note. So off he went. We were all really close to Pete. And I'll talk about his basketball, but Pete's personality, you know, that picture we showed, Pete has this big, broad smile on his face. But on the basketball court, that wasn't his persona. So we'll see that because next we're going to show a video, and we've got two videos here. The first is obviously much older, but let's roll them, and I'll make some comments about Pete as we watch this. You know, obvious the ball was attached to him, but the face. Pete was a better athlete than people realize, I think. You'll see him get his lift. Unbelievable ball. Unbelievable. Hands, as I recall, they covered half the ball. And the thing you know about Pete is, yeah, he switched a lot of shots, but man, he was good using the backboard. He could keep and look at that pass. And those passes were always right on, right on.
And the thing that was so amazing about watching Pete play during that time was because a lot of kids now can do all of that stuff or some of it. But back then, we'd never seen anybody do anything like that. Put the ball behind their back, between their legs, throw it underhanded. It was just fascinating to watch during that time, and still is.
Yeah, it still is. And this shot sets a record, scoring record, NCAA scoring record, and you'll see a celebration that his teammates have him up on shoulders. He's smiling there, and then he looks up, and you'll notice his dad is standing back there in the black suit, kind of standing off, press. And here's the interview. They start interviewing Pete, and just the smile there, and then watch his expression. That's the side of Pete that we saw.
And that continued for a long, long time. We saw it when he was in high school, saw it when he was in college, and you can see it a lot of times during his NBA career too, that things just weren't always as happy as you would have believed they would have been for such a stellar athlete.
Yeah. Well, the pressure and that's been put on him, and we can talk about that some. His dad really pushed him. And one time, Pete made a pass, and we were in practice, and he made a pass, and I said, Pete, how can you do that? And he looked at me and he said, you don't understand. I said, well, what don't I understand? And he said, when I was 5 years old, I practiced 5 hours a day. And I said, oh, and there was talk. I mean, he talks later about practicing longer than that, 10 hours in the rain and the snow and all this. So, yeah. Now, this next one, it is from the NBA, but it shows some things and it's got music. It's a lot of fun. So let's watch this.
The future when Marty McFly goes back in time and plays Johnny B. Good at the school dance. And he gets to the solo and he just starts putting on a show, hopping across the stage, sliding on his knees, playing behind his back, and just shredding the whole time. And when he finally opens his eyes at the end, he realizes that the whole school is just staring at him, dumbstruck, like he grew a pair of antennae. He hands his guitar away and says,
"I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are going to love it."
That is Pistol Pete Maravich in a nutshell. Someone who came way before his time, like he'd been sent from the future. But Pistol Pete's mission wasn't to save his parents' marriage. It was to put on a show, which he did. His NBA career lasted 10 years, from 1970 to 1980. The Pistol was named to the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams, was a 5-time All-Star, and a 4-time All-NBA selection. He was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 1987 and is on the Mount Rushmore of the greatest college basketball players in history. I want to be very clear about something. Pete Maravich was different, okay? He was built different, and not different as in worse, like me. Maravich was a wizard.
Watch this.
Benjamin Franklin would have been jealous of his ingenuity. One of his NBA teammates described him as a stepchild of the human imagination. He handled the ball like he had it on a string. His acrobatic layups are singularly out of place in the NBA of the 1970s. The range and precision on his jumper could not have been better suited for a league with a three-point line. His no-look passes foreshadow the era of Showtime. And he did so much other odd, groundbreaking shit. So much stuff that was so outstandingly unique that I have no hesitation in calling him the most creative offensive player in NBA history.
Wow. So we wanted you to see those passes. I will tell you another vignette from practice. We're on 3 on. And all of you who played basketball are very familiar with this. So Tommy, you probably played as well as officiated, I'm assuming. Is that correct? Yeah. So you're practicing fast breaks. You got 2 wings, somebody in the middle, but somebody's getting the rebound, right? So, and then making the outlet pass. So Pete gets a rebound. And instead of making the outlet pass to the guy in the middle, Pete throws an overhanded baseball pass to the guy breaking on the right wing. The ball lands and spins right back to the guy breaking. And he lays it in. And I've never seen anybody else that could do that. Now, his hands were so big. I remember him covering half the ball. And so he had this incredible talent. And if you just noticed on that picture, he threw an underhanded full court pass and it hit the guy right in stride. So truly, truly remarkable talent. So let's go for, Pistol
All smile.
Pete's little sister. What do you think, Tommy?
Could be. There's a lot of similarities from those videos I just watched.
They really are. Yeah.
Yeah, this is remarkable, and I will tell you that as we sit around, I mean, we being the old guys in our high school class, and we knew Pete and talk about this. This kept coming up. Is God, she's like Pete's little sister. So let's take a look at Caitlin and her talent. And this is a question that I pose to you, and I may pose to you at the end. Are these guys and girls, is this guy and girl a generational talent? Or are they patrons of the same cloud? Are they patrons of something greater than a generational talent? So let's look. All right, you were there. You were there, I think, Tommy, when this happened. When she broke, was that in Iowa City?
It was. Yep.
It was. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And what was that like when she broke? Because she did it in the first half. Did the game stop like it did with Peter?
Well, when she broke Kelsey Plum's record, the NCAA Division I women's record, it was against Michigan in the middle of February, and she only needed 8 points to do it. And she came out firing. I have never been a part of an atmosphere that was like that night. And I've worked 16 ACC women's tournaments next to Freddie. You know, I've worked all sorts of Big Ten men's and women's basketball games. I run the shot clock for the Iowa men's teams. I've been at a lot of games, a lot of venues. I've never been a part of something that felt like that night that she broke Kelsey Plum's record. And she only needed 8 points. She came out firing, and she might have scored the team's first 8 points. She hit a three and a layup, and then she came down the court, and one of her logo threes she hit to break the record, and the place just went insane.
Crazy. They went crazy.
And it went crazy. And Lisa Bluter, head coach for Iowa, she had intended, and she even told the officials, when Caitlin breaks the record, I want to call a timeout right away. Well, it happened, and everybody lost their minds, including Lisa. And it all happened so fast that she couldn't get that timeout. So Michigan came down and ran a set or time. I think the ball went out of bounds. And then Lisa was able to get the timeout, you know, and they recognized the moment and everything. And the place was going bonkers. I mean, I get there 2 hours prior to every home game to start my duties. And I got there 2 hours prior. I think it was a 7 p.m. local game. So I got there at 5 o'clock. There were lines out the door at every entrance to the arena. And I mean, and doors don't open until 90 minutes out. And so people have been waiting there for who knows how long. And doors, by the time I get there, doors still don't open for another half hour for ticketed fans. So it was just a crazy atmosphere there. I've never seen so much media, and it was a lot of fun. And when she broke Pete's record, it was on a free throw, I believe, a technical foul free throw.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was interesting. And I believe they ironically came to review. So they came over to me for an instant replay review for a potential upgrade of a foul. And they came out of it with an intentional foul against Ohio State, I believe. And Caitlin went to the free throw line and broke the record by herself at the free throw line. So some think that's pretty cool. Some wish it would have happened, you know, on another logo 3 or something. But yeah, pretty fun atmospheres there.
But was it bigger? Was there a bigger, more electric atmosphere when she broke Plum's record or when she broke Pete's record?
Well, that's a good question. I think they were they're probably pretty close to even, and I think for different reasons. There's so much buildup and anticipation to Plum's record. That's what everybody had talked about since the beginning of the season. The countdown had been on, for that record specifically. And so everybody was aware of that one and anticipating that one. And she broke that. And then people kind of looked at how many games are left and how far away is Pete's record now and stuff like that. And so there wasn't as much buildup and anticipation to breaking Pete's record versus Plum's record.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that day, Iowa only lost, I think, 5 games all season, with the last one being the national championship. But one of their losses was at Ohio State. They led by double digits in the fourth quarter. Ohio State came back, forced overtime. Iowa lost, and Ohio State ended up winning the Big Ten regular season title. So the last regular season home game for Caitlin Clark's senior day is a revenge game, so to speak, against Ohio State. And so that atmosphere was pretty crazy. It was our arena being up north. Our arena doesn't have air conditioning. Because usually it's cold outside, right, during basketball season. So they open the air handlers a little bit more and pump some cold in the arena if it's getting too warm. Well, it was Sunday, March 3rd, 75 degrees outside at the beginning of March in Iowa. It was unexpected. So there was no cold air to pump in. You had 16,000 people there in an intense atmosphere. There's a little thermometer down at the score table that read 90 degrees during that game down at the court. So it was, both of them were quite fun and exciting and, intense atmospheres, but for a little different reasons, I would say.
Well, didn't they, and they needed to win that game. Iowa needed to win that game for Big Ten tournament seeding and
to get the 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Yep.
Which means they'd be in the opposite bracket from Ohio State, right?
Ohio State, yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, she did it. So let's look at some highlights from the LSU game this year in the March Madness.
Supports LSU, an outstanding offensive rebounding team. Given opportunities to take shots tonight, they need her to feel confident in her mid-range. And I think that Iowa is okay giving up the mid-range. Here's Clark driving in for has averaged over 21 points in her collegiate career. That's third most amongst active players. Clark backdoor.
Great pass.
Easy too. It was Poa who drew 2 offensive fouls on Clark in last year's national championship game. She has more size and length. Clark, you bet. 3:30 to go in the first quarter. Clark looking to turn the corner. Lays it in. What's the foul?
So their 3-point line as of 21-22 was the same as the men's. From 2007 to that point, the men's was 22 feet 1 3/4 inches, and the women's was still at 19.9 until 21. So when you see Caitlin shooting way beyond, just remember that 3-point line is the same as the men's play in the NCAA.
Balance, hitting threes from the perimeter and then opportunities for threes in the paint. Holter flags it down for Iowa. In the backcourt, Martin gets
This is
it.
incredible.
Catch, fire, corner wide open. Williams, no, and O'Grady to rebound. Clark running. Clark eyes up behind the back through the lane, lays it in.
Now that layup right there reminds me so much of the way Pete Maravich played. Put the ball behind his back and use that little scoop shot to put it in. That is classic Pete Maravich and now classic Caitlin Clark.
So left, 3, like Noah. She got an IV because she's been so sick before that UCLA game. That's how sick she was.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
She was so much fun to watch.
Oh,
You never knew when she was going to go up and throw one in,
But it-
or drive by somebody and put it behind her back. She's a lot of fun to watch.
absolutely. She's such a great passer, and she's got good lift, and she just is just a wonderful shot. Now, do you think she's going to pull up? No, everybody else thought she was going to shoot, but this one, look. Did you know what you were watching, Tommy? Did you realize? When did you realize that this was something special?
Well, when I saw her in high school, when she committed to Iowa, a friend of mine and I were talking about her, and I had seen her play. So then I saw her play for the first time, and I said, "Wow, she's going to be good." But you can't ever expect something like this, right? You know what she became, and early on, she, I would say, from my vantage point, lacked the maturity that she developed throughout her 4 years, and you could see it. She would throw a pass in it that a teammate wasn't expecting, because she would, how they say a good quarterback can throw their receivers open. Well,
Right.
Caitlin did the same thing. But her first year or two, her teammates weren't ready for it. They didn't know that Caitlin was going to throw her open. And so there'd be missed passes. And then, Caitlin would be shaking her head and this and that. And I think the coaches did a great job of helping her. Well, one, helping her teammates to understand, be ready for the ball at all times if Caitlin's got it. Because it may come to you and you didn't know it was possible for it to get to you. But also they work with Caitlin to help them understand that the other players on the court aren't seeing things the way that she is. And so, and so you have to understand that she's going to see things at times that the others aren't. And you just has to be okay with that. And then when you get a chance, you can talk to them. Caitlin, you can say to your teammate, "Hey, this is how I saw this play, have your hands ready next time, a learning opportunity."
Yeah.
So I don't think, obviously, any of us were prepared for what this has become, all the records and all the popularity and viewership numbers and attendance numbers and all of this stuff. And, it's even continuing with the Indiana Fever and the WNBA. And I don't think any of us expected it, obviously. I do remember her freshman year. It was the COVID year. So not many people were there. There's, family and a few select others, but I was one of the select others that got to be there. And I remember thinking, wow, this is going to be something special, but you can't ever imagine something like this.
Well, this is I found several quotes from her. One was when she was asked about the revenge. You mentioned the word revenge in that LSU game. She said, you need to not focus on the past, but remember where your feet are. And I thought that was great advice for not just for basketball, but it was a very, very prescient sort of thing to talk about, I thought. And this is a picture from her on Saturday Night Live with that great smile of hers. But she said, I don't want the record to be the reason people remember me. I hope people remember me for the way I played with a smile on my face, my competitive fire. They can remember the wins, but also just like the fun me and my teammates had together. Is that the essence of Caitlin? Is that your impression, Tommy?
I would say the smile would come at the end of games because of the competitive fire. If she wasn't, unless the game was starting to get out of hand or something like that, she wasn't smiling a ton. She was, she was fired up, ready to go, wanting to get that win. Now, if things were in hand, or we're late in the game and her and her teammates know that they've got it locked up, sure, then yeah, the smile came and stuff like that. But when the outcome of the game was in doubt, there weren't too many smiles from Caitlin because of the competitive fire, focused on trying to go get that win.
Well, I will tell you that you're talking about the passing, and that was a great description of what Pete was like. Also in high school, that his teammates had to learn if he was looking at you, you weren't getting the ball. You were only going to get the ball. And after he hit a couple of people in the face and in the chest, people began to realize you better pay attention to not where he's looking, but if you're open. So same. That's a beautiful description you gave, Tommy. So you mentioned, and this is about doable help, helping people conquer stress and anxiety and burnout, which I will admit, Caitlin helped greatly this year for people who are anxious but we do it through well-being coaching and master classes and functional medicine at-home labs and a platform of digital resources based on lifestyle as medicine to help you eat well, move well, and live well. Our passion is to support your journey while you become the best version of yourself. So that's about doable health. Let's take a look now. We've seen both of them on tape. Let's look at their career numbers, okay? Caitlin, from 2020, and you've already referenced the fact that that's our pandemic year. She could have played next year, but is obviously going to the WNBA. She scored 3,951 points, and that includes the NCAA tournament. Pete scored 3,667. Now, in the games played, and you notice I've highlighted the one that we need to talk about. She played 139. He played 83 games. Well, back in his day, freshmen didn't play on the varsity. They played on the freshman team. And the NCAA did not count freshman statistics into the NCAA record. Pete actually scored 741 points his freshman year. So had he come along today, those 741 points would have been added. Points per game, she averaged 28.4 for 4 years. In 3 years, Pete averaged 44.2. That's an incredible number. Field goal percentage, she was at 46, he was at 44. Caitlin was really, really a superior shot. Her three-point percentage was 37.7 or 38, and she's shooting from the logo. I mean, it's remarkable how far out she would shoot. Now, I don't know if she did that during regular season games or that was something she did in the NCAA tournament, but she would shoot.
That's all season long.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And of course, here again, Pete didn't have a three-point shot. Now, Dale Brown, the coach who followed Pete's father, Press, said that they went back and looked at film, I guess drew the three-point line in and said Pete would have averaged 57 points a game with a three-point line. And I'll attest he could shoot from anywhere. And he was a great outside shot. He was just so smooth. And he got the name Pistol at Raleigh Broughton. And because he started so many shots down by his right hip that one of the news people named him Pistol. Because it's like he's shooting a pistol. Free throw percentage, she's at 86. That's incredible. He was at 78. Rebounds per game, she got 7.1 over 4 years. He got 6.5. And this one's going to shock you. She averaged 8.2 assists per game. He 5.1. Now, he may have been way ahead of his time, but I think most of us would have thought he had a higher assist record. Now, Caitlin did average 4 turnovers a game, as Tommy said. Her teammates weren't ready. Pete, I'm not sure. I hadn't seen a statistic. I don't know what that is. Now, what are the qualifiers here? Because I've heard people argue, her record shouldn't count because of, the 3 years or the no 3-point shot. She used a smaller ball. I think in 1984, the NCAA women's basketball switched the ball to a smaller ball. It's 1 inch or 2.54 centimeters in circumference, smaller than the men's. It weighs 20 ounces. The men's ball weighs 22 ounces. And I think, to be honest with you, I think the way her ball goes through the net is so beautiful. And I think the women, when they shoot and that ball goes through the net, it's just something really beautiful about it. So I don't know if it plays into it. And now on Pete's side, besides no 3-point shot and only playing for 83 games, there was no shot clock, which means you could hold the ball. So would he have averaged more without that? If there had been a shot clock, would he have had more possessions? So statistically, we look at a few more comparisons. All right. Tommy's already mentioned about the attention, and we'll put numbers by that in a minute. Caitlin made $3.5 million in college with name, image, and likeness. She had a contract with all kinds of people, including Nike, including that there's some sort of grocery market out there, Tommy, that's
Hy-Vee. Yep.
Yeah.
Hy-Vee
is that a big chain?
Yep, it's the most popular grocery store in the Midwest.
And they created something called Caitlin Crunch.
Yeah, they had a breakfast cereal. I've never seen so much hype about a breakfast cereal. I don't know if it tasted any good, but it was going off the shelves pretty quick.
In the draft, Caitlin was number 1, Pete was number 3. And here's the number that shocked everybody. The number 1 draft pick in the WNBA gets $76,000, $535. And I think over the first 4 years, she ends up getting $388,000 essentially. Meanwhile,
we have a comment here from Kim Russell. I wonder what percentage of the team shots each took. With 44 points per, there might not have been lots of assist opportunities. I imagine that went up in the NBA.
It did. And the points per game came down, although 1 year he averaged 28 points in the NBA. So there's no doubt that Pete was the center of the entire team. There's also no doubt that his dad said, Pete, if you don't go to LSU with me, don't ever bother about coming home. Because Pete didn't want to go to LSU. Pete wanted to go to, where was it, Mike? West
Virginia. Yeah. And go ahead.
No, where Jerry West was. Why did he want to go to West Virginia?
Well, he wanted to go someplace further away from home because, of course, before Press got the job at LSU, he was at North Carolina State. And that would have meant that Pete was staying right where he was in high school. And he was interested in spreading his wings a little bit. And he wanted to get away. And at that time, Jerry West School was one of the top schools in the country, as it has been a lot of years. But he wanted to go where Jerry West went. He was a real fan of Jerry West. He thought the world of him as a basketball player and a human being. So he wanted to go there. And Dad said, if you do, you don't need to bother coming home anymore. So
why didn't Pete go to the ACC schools?
Pete was not a scholar. And at the time, I think they did have minimum requirements to go to the ACC schools, just as they do now. And I'm not going to divulge anything more than I need to, but to say that Pete spent so much time with basketball, he didn't spend too much time in between the books.
Yeah,
He was smart, but he did not spend too much time in the books.
It's almost like he knew that he was going to be a basketball player, and it didn't have anything to do with. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But Caitlin makes, and there are a lot of people that have been outraged about this, about how little she's making, and there's just justification for that after what she has done in college.
Kim mentions Caitlin signed with Nike for $8 million, so she's doing good.
I
believe that's actually 28
million. 28.
Yeah.
Plus a shoe deal. And
if they don't name that shoe the Logo 3s, then they need to hire me, because that needs to be the name of the shoe.
Yeah. Well, I think that $3.5 million was while she was in school. I think it's an add on now, right? So and of course Pete made a lot of money, obviously, but out of the box from the draft. But here's the thing: I didn't realize this. The WNBA loses $10 million a year. The players have a 10% of, I guess, net profits that they get. So that's one of the big problems the WNBA has had. And we go to the next slide and we look at, oh, this is cool. This is cool. Did you go to this game?
Yep, I was there.
55,646 people watching Iowa and DePaul, wasn't it? In the football stadium, the biggest crowd to ever watch a in-person women's basketball game.
Wow, that's unbelievable. That looks like you're playing up at Syracuse in their big dome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was interesting. It was cool. It was a cool fall day, and there was a breeze, so it was interesting. Some of the shots.
Well, and this was a charitable event, if I remember correctly. This
I think it supported the children's hospital next door to the football stadium.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now we're going to go and ask some questions. All right. Who had the greater impact in college?
I think probably Caitlin did, because of the nice boost she's given female athletics, not just in basketball, but in general, that she's had. Of course, she's also been in a situation where she has a lot more media than Pete did when he was playing. I don't ever remember seeing Pete play basketball on TV when I was in college, and he was in college too. You could get it on some of the off station channels watching LSU, but you could get, when Caitlin started making a run, you could see her almost every Saturday on TV. So I think at this point, she may have had a bigger impact in college than maybe Pete did, and of course he wasn't planning on a winning team either. So
yeah, well, it's hard to judge because he changed the game. I mean, he was, but he's so far ahead of his time. But now to see his little sister have that impact with digital media and all of the TV, that the average, as I may have mentioned already, for the WNBA finals is 700,000 views. Caitlin had the what, 19.8 million or 18.9 million to watch the finals. Pete did not have that social media. But I will say this: when he went to LSU, the freshman game sold out. They'd be climbing into windows, watching from the outside. So, and as soon as Pete's game was over, everybody'd leave.
That's true.
So, I don't think there's any question whose team performed better. It was Caitlin. Pete was never surrounded by the best team he played on may have been his junior year in high school, but he never got a chance to have a championship of any kind, to really win the SEC, win the SEC tournament. It was just, he really never, Pete, and in high school we didn't. I mean, Pete never won a championship. Well, Caitlin record survived 54 years.
And
What do you
before
think, Tommy?
that, Dr. Joe, we have another comment. Oh, actually two. One is, I suspect Caitlin will help raise the roof for WNBA pay schedules. And the other one is, I never saw a single LSU game on TV.
That's true. That's true. And I think that's what Mike said. But will her record survive for 54 years?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Well, you know what she said? She said she hoped that somebody would break it so she could be there to congratulate them, just like Lynette Woodard and Plum were there to congratulate her. And she said she stood on the shoulders of all those women who came before. So she hopes somebody does break it. The bigger audience, I think we've already answered. In their era, you could argue, but Caitlin has changed the economics. I ran into a guy from Iowa City, Tommy, who had always gone to the women's games at the University of Iowa until 2 years ago, when he said they stopped having public sale of tickets because it was so.
Yeah, this year there's almost 16,000 seats in Carver Hawkeye Arena. Every home game was sold out in season tickets. They sold almost 16,000 season ticket packages. So you couldn't get a ticket for one game without going to the secondary market.
Yeah, that's what he said. So who will have a better professional career?
Well, I can remember when Stephon Curry came out of college, and folks were saying that he would never make any impact in the NBA. And my goodness gracious, look at what he's done. I think she's going to be the same kind of player in the pros. She may not score 28 points a game, but she also may end up with 10 or 12 assists a game, which is what the girls' game needs a little bit more of. So I think she's gonna do just fine. She's gonna do just fine. She's got a lot of grit, and that's what's gonna pull her through too.
Tommy?
Yeah. I think she'll be a great pro. And there's always, you never know how somebody's going to transition from college to pro, especially early on. But I saw a short little video yesterday of her first practice with the Fever with Boston from South Carolina, who was the number one pick last year. And I think those two together, she looked like, from what I saw yesterday, she looked like she'll be all right. Yeah. And I know there's some people that, Diana Taurasi said she's going to take a lot of bumps and she's in for a rude awakening. I guess we'll see. I think she'll be all right.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, yeah. I think, I don't know. I hope you're right. I hope both of you are right, because I think she's just so wonderful to watch. I don't know that you're right. I remember watching the final game in the NCAA, and twice in a row down the court, she lost the ball. It got away from her. And I think about Pete and the mastery he had of that ball. And I just don't think there's anybody on the planet who can match his vision and his ball handling. So I think he transitioned from an era where the Afro-Americans were not playing on that LSU team, but when he went to the NBA, he did get a chance to play with the absolute best athletes on the basketball court. So I'm going to say that I think Pete is going to have a better professional career, but I hope you're both right, because there's nothing I'd rather see than that girl shooting those rainbow threes and making those passes, because she is just wonderful to watch. So I will say this about Pete. His father died in April of 1987. Pete allegedly said to his dad, "Dad, see you soon." Pete died January the 5th, 1988. Pete had a single coronary artery. You and I have three. Our left coronary artery is a dominant one that supplies most of the heart. He had a single right coronary artery, no left coronary artery. And as far as I know, no ancillary to that. And most people that have that congenital disease are dead by the time they're 17 years old. Pete lived till he was 40. How do you want to wrap this up, Tommy? It is absolutely fabulous having your perspective and your expertise to share with us about what I'm going to call two patrons of the cloud, because I think they're beyond generational. I don't think it's just limited to a generation. I think Caitlin has changed women's basketball, and I hope it's forever. And I think Pete did the same thing. But Pete was a showman. Pete put on a show. Caitlin's all about her team's got to win, or she's got that look on her face, right? So what do you want to say in closing?
I'll just say, one, thanks for having me on. But also, yeah, I feel pretty fortunate to have had a front row seat for what's happened the last 4 years. And I've got a 7.5-year-old little girl who has gotten into basketball by watching Caitlin, and she got to meet her and take pictures and the whole deal. And although my little girl didn't get to go to the Final Four, I've been to the last two. And so it's just been a lot of fun. And I feel really fortunate to have had a front row seat for it.
Well, we may have to have a podcast next year for you to tell us what it's like in the stadium next year without Caitlin. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
That sounds like she's got a pretty good replacement, though, from what her coach has said. So
well, they got that transfer from Villanova.
Yeah, and
coming in.
Anyway, Joe, thanks for doing this. Thanks for highlighting one of the best people I knew in high school, and just a good friend all around. And Tommy, nice to have met you and gotten your perspective on a lot of things that I hadn't thought about. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Mike, thank you. And I know Mike told me earlier, we were talking, he said, what did you and Pete never talk about, Mike?
Oh, well, we never talked about lots of things, but one of the things we never talked about really was his basketball statistics and all that. He just didn't want to talk about those kind of things. It was when he and I were together, basketball kind of went someplace else. So we could just enjoy friendship with each other.
And I will share with everybody that Pete was very close to my parents. And I'd come home a Friday night and they'd say, "Well, you missed Pete." And I said, "What do you mean, Pete? What do you mean?" They said, "Oh, Pete's been over here 3 hours talking." And then at the NBA game, All-Star game in 1987, in the spring of 1987, my dad went to the game and Pete was there. And he called me. My dad called me and he said, "You're not going to believe this. I talked to Pete for 4 hours." And Pete has his life straightened out. So I think Caitlin's the brightest star, Tommy. I think she lights up wherever she is. And I feel that spirit when I watch her play basketball. So I think we've just talked about two patrons of the clouds. And I thank the audience for listening to us. Carry on. Thank Thank Thais for doing the back. Thank Doable. Maybe we'll get a chance to do this again and revisit this next year.